My name is Hurtado, and I'm the program manager at Cascade, which is a transitional program for single homeless adult women. We house up to 32 women at Cascade. They each come in and have their own room with a lock on their door. In their room it's a bed and a wardrobe and a desk. For many of our women, it's the first time that they've had a room of their own. Many of our women have, I would say over 70% of our women have some histories of sexual or domestic violence. Many of our women have substance abuse issues along with mental health issues. And what we treasure Cascade because this may be the first time that they've ever had the opportunity to kind of deal with those issues. So how women come into Cascade is they go through a phone screening, which is really just a couple of questions. We set up a time for them to come in, and then they go through a lot of paperwork. And we hear their story, and then over the course of their first month with us, which we call that their guest period, we have them meet with a mental health counselor, a chemical dependency counselor, and then their case manager. And then with the woman, they all three come together with a plan, a goal plan to address the barriers to their barriers to their permanent housing. Whatever it was that made them homeless. Usually it's not one circumstance, but a combination of many. And many of our women also have health issues. So often when they come into Cascade, it's their opportunity to be in a safe place and have surgeries that they may not have been able to have while they were staying in shelters. The difference between transitional housing and shelters is typically that people can stay in the program 24 hours a day. So it's not like they have to spend the night and get up in the morning and leave. They can stay there. And it is a clean and sober program, and that, Cascade is different than a lot of programs in that we give people the opportunity to get sober 3 times. And we do that because women, their history of violence that they've experienced coming into Cascade and them dealing with their issues through substances is very common, and so we try to make it a safe place for people to be able to disclose when they've been using substances and then not lose their housing. So we do this 3 tries, and then if by the 3rd try someone can't be sober and they're not ready to be there right now, they can leave the program and then they can come back again. So it's not like people, we just say that, they leave and we welcome them back with kindness when it's time to come back and recognize that they have work to do. For many of our women, we have Katrina survivors right now, and for many of the women it's the first time that they've ever had an opportunity to look at kind of the dynamics of relationships, their children, their family, and all those things. It also is really, I think, really hard for most of the women when they come in and they live in so much of an institution that they're being controlled by case managers or service providers, and then trying to recognize that balance between building their independence and relying on people to help them. So people can stay there a maximum of 1 year, and right now the permanent housing waiting list in Seattle, people have to wait 18 months to 2 years to get into permanent housing. So typically when they come into the program at Cascade, we start to fill out housing applications for all of the local permanent housing places, subsidized housing, and we get people hooked up to their entitlements, whether that's GAU or GAX or Social Security or VA benefits. And then the women, start that progress of trying to work on themselves, hurry up and wait for that permanent housing to come up. Then, so often when the women leave us, they go to other transitional programs because their permanent housing isn't ready for them. So how the continuum works is that there's a women referral service, and they refer women to whatever all the shelters communicate with them about an open bed, and then then the women go to that place. And the Compass Center has Hammond House, which is a shelter for homeless women, and we have an internal referral service that if someone's ready to come when there's an opening at Cascade, they can just go in kind of through the back door. The Compass Center also has transitional houses, which we have 5 houses in the north end, which are single family homes that 6 women live in, 2 of the houses. And so that's also another place that they can go to while they're waiting for permanent housing to come up. In 2001, there was a big earthquake in Seattle, and the old Compass Center, which was 77 South Washington, is an old brick building, and the wall separated. And in that building at that time was the Hygiene Center, the Client Services Office, and the men's program. So the men's program went out to a church in Fremont. They were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. The Hygiene Center went to a trailer underneath the viaduct, and the Client Services Offices initially went to a trailer and then ended up using space in the Millionaires Club. And so all these programs left that building for 4 years. During that time, the Compass Center raised money to renovate that building, and at the time the only money that was available to renovate that building was for permanent housing. So that the Karlstrom, which was named after the founder of the Compass Center, Otto Karlstrom, is a 23-unit studio apartments for homeless people, and they all have bathtubs, which is really different than most subsidized housing. And men and women both live there. I would say that we have 4 women who came from Compass Cascade when we first opened the building 2 years ago, and they're all still there. And so right now I would say a third of the units are for women and the rest are for single men. And it is a unique building in the sense that we can house people there who are still struggling. It's not a clean and sober building, so though we offer them support and we try to support them through their addictions, it's still a safe place. We've had 2 medical crises in the building that resulted in actually some flooding, which got staff attention, and we were able to save both of those people. One of them went into a diabetic coma, and one of them went into had a medication that made him very lightheaded, and he hit his head and went down. So just by virtue of having the Karlstrom right next to this building, and this building is the new building that was built from a parking lot next to the Karlstrom, which now houses the men's program, the Client Services Office, the Hygiene Center, and then the administrative offices of the Compass Center. And all of the women, I would say their ultimate goal is to get permanent housing. But I think sometimes we as social service providers aren't offering the kind of support that we need to offer people once they leave shelter and transitional housing and move into their own space. Their goal is to get their own space, but when they get into those 4 walls all by themselves and they get bored and they get lonely, old relationships often are knocking at their door, or the local drug dealer who just wants to give them some just to visit with them and ends up taking over their unit. I mean, I think that once we've offered people so much support services within the shelter and transitional program, once they go into permanent housing, we need to be able to maintain connection with them for 6 months to a year in order to have them keep their permanent housing. Statistics show that if people can stay housed for 6 months, that their chance of staying housed for 2 years is up to 90%. So it's a very critical time, that first 6 months after leaving transitional or shelter and having their own space. In the Karlstrom, initially when we opened that building, we had actually the same building rules as we currently have about guests and overnight guests, but initially we didn't have anybody at the front door. And so initially people brought in the neighborhood to do drugs with them, and we currently still have people who struggle with their addictions, but they now struggle by themselves because we have a front desk staff. That means that the neighborhood's not coming in, and that and then they're able to be able to ask for help when they need it. We have one man who's been housed in there the whole time since we opened the building, and he continues to struggle, but he's housed. He was homeless for 4 years, and he has mental health and substance abuse issues. And whenever people hear that he's housed and been housed that long, they think it's a minor miracle that he's been able to maintain housing for over 2 years. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't struggle, because I would say he definitely struggles. But I think that what is the expectation and what is success for our people, and are we having different rules than society in general? Not everybody who comes through these programs have substance abuse issues, but we definitely have that criteria of clean and sober programs. And when they move into their own apartments, they have to be able to engage in substances or not, or be able to manage that. And it's it's really hard.